Thank you all for coming. I'm Rabbi Aryeh Spero, president of the National Conference of Jewish Affairs, and we're here in Washington, D.C. today. We came specifically first at a sit-in in front of Congressman Speaker, Madam Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office, and we're here to protest the resolution that was passed a week ago that failed, number one, to mention Representative Omar, who herself has been guilty, it's now 3 times, of blatant anti-Semitic remarks. And then, of course, the resolution, which should have specified the scourge of anti-Semitism as something terrible in and of itself. No, she could not get that passed. The resolution was watered down to the point of basically condemning all hate. But this was not started because of all hate. This was started because of remarks 3 times by Representative Omar that were specifically anti-Semitic. The Speaker was not able to provide the resolution that should have been given because of certain caucuses within the Democrat Party. The Black Caucus, the Socialist Progressive Caucus, certain people from CARE and that represent Muslim constituencies, Cortez and her quartet. They seem to overwhelm the ability of the Speaker to do the right thing. And at the end, instead of Nancy Pelosi choosing this historic moment to condemn in the House of Representatives, anti-Semitism, she chose political expediency, what would be good for the party. And for elections and for victory, she needs certain constituencies to win. And that's not courageous, that's not noble. I think that the Speaker of the United States, of the House of Representatives, has failed the American people. She had an opportunity to stand tall, she didn't. She had an opportunity to stop anti-Semitism dead in the tracks in the House that she is, at this point, Speaker of that House. She didn't do it. Not at all. This is an historic turning point. This isn't simply anti-Semitism that you find on the street, your garden variety anti-Semitism. This was anti-Semitism coming from the House, the People's House. And she's allowed the stench, the odious stench, the odor of anti-Semitism to pervade the House. She had a chance to condemn it. She didn't. It's very disappointing. And worse, she said that those who criticized Representative Omar are somehow guilty. She might not have said it, but the people that were part of the Democrat Party that were against the resolution, they said that if you criticized Representative Omar rightfully, that somehow that's Islamophobia. We can't have a condition like this, that if you're a representative from a Muslim community and says something terrible, that you're allowed to get away with it, because if you say anything against it, that's Islamophobia. That's silencing us. That's not the American way. That leaves us defenseless. There are things that have to be criticized. So that's why we're here today. I want to thank Congressman Louie Gohmert. He's a stand-up guy. He's the one that made this possible. Louie, I call him, he's the people's congressman, because you can always rely on Louie. So here he is, Congressman Louie Gohmert from the great state of Texas.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to stand here with this group. They know what anti-Semitism is. They face it on a far too regular basis. And like the rabbi was saying, what was even more amazing than how badly watered down the resolution was that was to condemn specific language of anti-Semitism was that they doubled down and began to criticize the 23 of us who were outraged that we were not condemning anti-Semitism specifically, because it was an anti-Semitic line that got everybody to the floor to vote on a resolution. But then to condemn those of us who did have the courage to stand up and say, this is wrong. We need to condemn anti-Semitism and not water it down with every other kind of hate. Yeah, except for the 7 kinds of hate that we're told in Scripture that God hates. Right. All other hate is wrong. But when there's specific anti-Semitism, we got to call it down. Some have said, I've read lines about, before the Holocaust, anti-Semitism was everywhere, and they missed the point. It may always be in some people's hearts below the surface, but if it's called down when it comes public and gets started, then it doesn't continue. And in Germany, nobody was calling it down. Not enough people who were not Jewish were standing up and saying, this is wrong, that we can't let this happen. And as a result, just 12 years, 1933 when the Holocaust really started to 1945 when the last death camp was liberated, 6 million Jews. Yes, there have been other genocides that were horrendous. Slavery is horrendous. What a horror, set our country back so far. But there's no moral equivalence to the hatred for the children of Israel. And that's why it's so important to stop it when we hear it get started at all. And I'm embarrassed to be part of a legislative body that's supposed to stand against hate, and we didn't have a majority that was willing to say, no, we're not going to call it out. We're going to mask it behind all kinds of other hatred. Of course, not the kind of hatred that would try to kill Steve Scalise, but all other kind of hatred, we're going to condemn it, and it is an outrage. You condemn it before it gets started, and it scares me so much to see this kind of language could be used, and we as the U.S. Congress don't have the courage to try to stop it right in its tracks. This is what scares me, and that's why I'm so proud to stand with these wonderful people, is because it's got to stop, and enough Americans have got to be outraged. And for those who believe the teachings in the Old Testament, what we call the Old Testament, whether you call it the Tanakh, but it's very clear in there that those who bless Israel will be blessed, those who curse Israel will be cursed. And as a nation, if we don't stand against this kind of cursing, it's not going to be good for us and our country. So thank you, Rabbi. Thank all of you for being and standing up. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. And we applaud all the congressmen who voted against this sham resolution.